many of us tend to play it fast and loose when it comes to salt. We know too much sodium is bad for us. Still, even though we have no idea how much salt we're actually taking in. But new federal guidelines could make doing the salt math just a little easier. The Fox Medical team's Beth Galvin is here to explain. Good morning, Beth. I have a confession to make. I am guilty. Grab it and just start shaking it on the vegetables. Especially.
Sometimes I joke that I should have like a salt lick around my neck. And I think the bottom line, Portia, is that a lot of us are eating way too much salt. And some of that sodium overload will come from our habit of automatically grabbing the salt shaker before we ever even taste our food. But the head of Grady's Primary Care Center says the real problem is the amount of salt that's hidden in the foods we buy. And these new guidelines could help us shop a little smarter.
When it comes to our health, salt matters, says Dr. Stacie Schmidt, director of the Primary Care Center at Grady Memorial Hospital, because too much salt drives up our blood pressure.
High blood pressure is responsible for about 50% of strokes, and it plays a really important role in heart disease, particularly congestive heart failure, but also heart attacks.
The U.S. government recommends we consume no more than 2,300 milligrams of salt, or a teaspoon a day, and no more than 15 milligrams for those of us at higher risk of heart disease. But many of us eat way more salt than that without realizing it.
I think that many people think a high sodium diet is due to putting too much salt on your food coming from the salt shaker. But what we don't realize is that there's tons of sodium added to the processed foods that we eat every day.
And certain foods can be packed with hidden salt.
Breads, pizza, deli meats, and sausages all contain very high levels of sodium, sometimes up to half of what you should eat in one day's period.
To help Americans cut the salt and have more low sodium choices, the Food and Drug Administration is releasing new salt guidelines, pushing food manufacturers and the restaurant industry to voluntarily reduce the amount of salt added to certain foods. To shop smarter, Dr. Schmidt says start checking the nutritional information, comparing sodium levels per serving on your favorite foods. And you want to be wary of canned foods, which are often high in salt, choosing labels that read no added salt or low sodium rather than reduced sodium, which Schmidt says can still be high in salt.
You also want to focus more on buying fresh produce and frozen produce. So frozen fruits or vegetables which have much lower sodium. In fact, no sodium has been added at all.
All right, and if you're preparing canned vegetables or beans, take a few seconds and rinse them off in water before you add them to your recipe. The American Heart Association says that one step alone can reduce the amount of salt in those vegetables or beans by about 40%. And also, when you sit down to eat, taste your food before you salt it, because it may not need more salt. And Portia, that's where I get a little bit tripped up, because it's just so automatic of adding salt for taste.
So, I mean, can people really get used to food with less salt, though?
I think they can. I mean, the American Heart Association says there are several studies that show that, people who cut their salt intake, their taste buds actually do change. And then when they try to eat salty foods, it's too salty, and they actually prefer lower salt foods.
Salt, that's true. I always end up doing that with my fish. That is true. So how do you gauge how much salt you're really taking in? I mean, when you say a teaspoon a day, that just seems almost impossible to meet when you consider what's already in and what we're adding.
Right. So if you're at high risk for heart disease, they recommend 1,500 milligrams. You can go to 2,300 if you're just your average Joe. But I think you want to check the labels. You want to look at the serving size, look at the amount of sodium that's in there, maybe even write it down while you're getting used to it, and then look at the percentage of the allotted daily. It'll be on the right-hand side, the allotted daily amount you should be getting, and it'll say like 12%. So then okay, I've already eaten up a little bit of my budget there.
That's true. All right. Sounds like work, but it's certainly work that is worth it when it comes to your health.
Absolutely.
All right. Good information. Thanks, Beth. Stay with us.